All right. Well, welcome to season 3 of Twin Cities Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin King, and I'm really excited for today's episode featuring Erica Suzanne. The title of this episode is Leadership, Relationships, and the Cost of Crossing the Lines. And so before I get into it with Erica, I just want to set the stage for our listeners and give us some context in terms of how we're going to discuss this topic. And one is that leadership dynamics happen. These types of leadership dynamics happen across gender and orientation. And I want to highlight some research findings on this. One is that toxic leadership is common and yet often begins subtly with blurred lines and boundary crossings. And according to Gandalfi and Stone, a toxic leadership appears across industries and organizational levels, yet remains under examined. Two, healthy leadership requires intentionality and balance by the leader. According to Gandalfi and Stone, when leaders prioritize their own needs, whether it be emotional, relational, or ego driven, over balance, the leadership dynamic begins to erode. And then thirdly, power and emotional needs create vulnerability on both sides. And so research shows that toxic leaders often exploit followers' emotional needs and desires and or anxiety and desires for approval. According to when in Dykes, these same dynamics can fuel inappropriate relationships, compliance, silence, and confusion about what is okay. And so, what we're talking about today isn't the story of crossing the lines, but it's more about the feeling of crossing the line. Because for some people, that feeling becomes very intoxicating and it can pull you into this space where you don't realize that it's happening. And by the time you do, those lines have already been blurred or crossed. So, with that foundation in place, I want to bring in someone that I know can speak about this from an emotional perspective. Her name is Erica Suzanne. She is the owner of Erica Suzanne matchmaking firm here, based in Stillwater, right? Or is it? Would you
Yep.
say Twin Cities?
Yeah, Twin Cities.
Okay, based in the Twin Cities. And so, Erica, welcome to Twin Cities Leaders.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I'm so excited to talk about this and actually meet you and discuss all the things toxic love.
All right. Well, as they say, let's get into it, right?
Yeah, yeah, excellent.
So let's just start with what drew you to matchmaking.
Well, it's not such a sexy story. I was in my young 20s and I was selling fax machines. And a headhunter picked me up for this role at a national dating service to sell. And I said, anything but selling fax machines. I can do anything but sell fax machines. And, suddenly I found myself in this dating service director. I mean, loved it. Loved it from the very beginning because it was this. This is this chatting one on one, talking about things that, like, I could ask the questions that you don't normally get to ask. And I'm a very curious person. So that just led me to where I am today. And, I've had a great career matchmaking. 1998 is when I got into it. And it certainly has changed since then. The dating scope in the world and people and all the things. So I'm always excited to talk about different subjects about this.
Okay. And so that's, if I do my math, that's 27 years, right?
Yes, I started when I was about 5.
Okay, right. So when did in that time, so was it during that time or before that time that you feel like you had like a gift for understanding people? Like when did you realize that?
During that time, really, actually, I mean, again, I was just out of college, and selling fax machines weren't does wasn't you don't really gain such interpersonal connection and skills. So when I went into this company called It's Just Lunch, it was privately owned at the time, and, I just learned that I had the gift of gab, as my mother would say. And, I could connect with people and be able to, get people to open up and communicate. And really, that's what this is, right? Matchmaking is essential, to get to know people and be able to understand them to be able to match them. So,
Mhm,
yeah, I fortunately have a gift with that.
mhm.
So,
So,
I'm great.
do you think there's this misconception about matchmaking or matchmakers, or has that misconception evolved over the years from when it started and you started in 1998 to now 2026?
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, back in the day, nobody ever talked about matchmaking, and then actually it was pre-online dating. So I started, advertising in the city pages and on Care 11, that was my reach. And, till now, the whole world is open up. I match make nationally, because of the online presence and internet and, all the things. So, um, completely different than when I started, for sure.
Okay. Okay.
Um, and I think more talked about, more accepted, more, people like to hire out services, and that's definitely this. So, um, yeah, and I
I would
think
imagine too more accessible. Like when I think of matchmaker, at least when I thought of it, like you think of it like for the elite or people who can afford it, or what I mean, that kind of thing. And I feel like now it's more accessible. Is that's just my perception of it?
for sure, for sure. I mean, there's definitely different levels, and it's definitely broadened. I think that back in the day, definitely that probably would have been the case, but much more accessible now to
Okay.
all sorts of folks. Yeah.
So let's talk about what do you think are the emotional needs that drive people into the wrong relationships?
Well, I think that people live by default, right? So you are going into the office, or you're going into the grocery store, or you're going into the gym, and you are feeling the way you feel right now, or, because of, you know, a bad day at work, or possibly a fight with a friend or a lover or family member or whatever. You feel the feels, right? So you are in that environment and you're feeling what you're feeling, and suddenly someone appears that, you know, kind of sparks something in you. I think that it isn't thought out. It's just it happens, right? And I think that what is missing with most people is their clear definition of what they want, what they will tolerate, what they won't tolerate, and that clarity that surrounds it. And I work on that with my clients and people that come into, my database every day, because I think that is so important to have all of that clarity, because you might wind up in a situation, or, situationship, as the kids call them these days, that you don't want because you haven't clearly defined what you want in your life.
Hmm. And so do what do people tend to ignore then, with or overlook when they see a red flag or something that potentially could lead into a situationship?
Well, I mean, where they're at, right? They ignore possibly where that person is coming from, where what their history is, who they are, yada yada yada. They're encompassing the attention and the dopamine hit,
Uh-huh.
uh, and they're ignoring maybe that, they were arrested last week for a DWI. I think
Mm.
it happens all the time because the dopamine is so powerful. It's like, ooh, ooh, I
Right.
like. I like the feeling, right? People are so highly um, suggestible to that right now, and I think it's I blame a lot on online, likes or online dating where you get that attention that you normally don't, right?
Yeah.
I think that it's just I think people are craving connection and human connection, and we have gotten a long way from that. Um, the 90s, right? You could pick someone up at the grocery store. And
Right.
your line could be, "How about those melons, Kevin?" Like that could work, and it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, you said something interesting. Like people will overlook, so they'll go away from what their core values are and what their beliefs, and maybe what they say they want in their mind. But
Yeah,
then it goes back to the whole thing about, but this person makes them feel a certain way, and maybe not be what they have in mind in terms of
yeah.
what's on their bucket or their checklist, but they feel good when they're around this person.
Yes, yes, for sure. And I think that, that is what sparks it, but it never stays. It literally never stays. So when I talk about that clarity of what you want, I really try to get people, my clients, anyone that I'm talking to, like really um encompassing that feeling of what that person is going to give because to avoid that dopamine hit, right? Like you're going to always have it, right? You're going to always smile and respond when someone's flirting because that feels good, right? But you don't have to go all in on that person that could be really bad for you because
Hmm.
you know exactly how this Prince Charming is going to show up or this woman is going to show up in your world because you just have connected with it. You feel it, you know it. You are very, very sure of it. So, I think that there's two things that happen at once that you have that clarity, but also that spark. Like it's always, you're always going to happen. This is always going to happen, but you don't have to follow through and go all in to that thing.
Hmm. What about, you know, I'm thinking about like stress, loneliness, insecurities. Like, how do all of those factor into this as well when you're receiving that attention? And if you are in that space where you are experiencing loneliness or unmet needs or just not feeling good about yourself, and someone comes in and fills that void, does that create a blurred vision of what this relationship
Of
can be?
course. Of course. Of course. Really, that is how it happens, right? Like, because there is some need that is being unmet in your
Mm,
world. Whether you're single or you're with a partner or, whatever, there's some need that is being unmet. And if that someone comes in and suddenly, you feel that, of course you're going to go towards that because it feels good and it's normal, right?
mhm,
But how you engage in it is where what we're talking about, like how where the lines get crossed, right?
right.
We all probably have seen by now that the CEO and the HR at the Coldplay concert.
Mhm,
And she just did an interview and she said, "Hey, that was a mistake. I had a few cocktails and the music was right and the lighting was right and here we go, right? Like, but that's where that that
there's a consequence to it.
there is a consequence to those behaviors, you
So
know?
it's like most people know what's right or wrong. Like they know, like, okay, this
Yeah,
logically is wrong on different levels. You know, whether it's
yeah,
faith based or just commitment based or just they have an idea. But like you said, like but in the moment, something feels right, and then that supersedes everything.
yeah, yeah. I mean that is the age old thing. Like people do it all the time. People, you know, commit crimes and crimes of passion and will do things that they would not normally do because of that feeling. And that is what we have to get a hold of. Because I
Mhm.
think that, again, if you're missing something in your world, right? You're missing something in your own life. It's our responsibility to fill it and to know what we want and what we don't want and create this full life. So we can deter that a little bit more. We can have a little more like a say in how that happens, when that happens. Like when your boss comes up and reaches behind you and, starts snuggling you, would you walk away or would you lean back?
Hmm. So so we know, like, you we mentioned before we came online, that some people, like leaders, are very ambitious and they're goal oriented and they're used to achieving what they want or getting what they want, and that can be a part of this equation.
Oh, for sure.
Why do you think people though will risk it all, like knowing the consequences? You might lose your job, your career might be in jeopardy. Why do you think they willing to risk it for that feeling?
Well, I mean, I think that, whoever that person is, right? Like the person in power, they might that the other person might feel like, "Oh, they'll take care of me," or they like me, so I'm okay. Whether, the whole world falls apart and, behind you, like they're going to take care of me because they're the person in power that likes me. Yeah, no, we there it's so confused. It's very confused. And I think that a lot, and I'm going down another rabbit hole, but I work with a lot of very successful, powerful women, and they find a lot of times that men don't like them because they're intimidated or they're just too alpha, right? They're not in their feminine, so men sway away. And so, if that's the situation, and if there's a powerful woman and a powerful man getting together and they are, crossing the lines, that woman's like, yeah, finally, a man is showing up in my world that is going to take care of me and like feel that security and power and that alpha male that I've been looking for. Because there's not a lot that show up these days, unfortunately.
Wow. So okay, so does this matter? You think, like if the person is single or in a relationship or married, so these same dynamics, like like a person, does someone justify it more so if they're single or than not?
I mean, I would hope so, but I don't know if that really was ever a factor. I really don't know. I mean, again, if a person is married and has a very fulfilled marriage and is very settled, that person is not going to walk towards that. They're going to have a different reaction. If a person is broken or is missing something, they're always going to walk towards that, whether you're married or in a relationship or single.
Okay, so it doesn't matter. Okay. So I love the examples you just given. So what are the early signs then? Like, is it like you said, the leaning back or touching someone and then they engage with you? Like, what are the early signs that people would maybe overlook or might be even be obvious?
Yeah. Um, well, a quick example, I had a client years ago that he was the boss and he had told me his assistant or someone's assistant came into the office and said, "Oh my gosh, why do you look so down?" And he said, "Oh, it was a rough night. I had a fight with my wife." Okay, so right there, crossing a boundary, right? But they had friendly relationship. They knew each other in the workplace, is small, so it's banter. So he said, "Rough night with the wife, I had a fight." And then she said, "Oh my gosh, I would never fight with you. How could anyone fight with you?" Boom. Explosion. Like, I mean, those are very subtle things that that could be really quickly situational and go, or it could open a big old door that you could walk through. And that's what happened with this particular fella. Like, he was like, I was missing that at home. My wife wasn't giving me that attention, that she didn't look at me like with the adoring eyes anymore. It was pissed off because I didn't take out the garbage, right? Like, so, it was a different sense that he felt, and all of a sudden it was something was awoken with him, like, oh, I am a man. I am, wanted,
Yeah.
and it was so simple like that. I mean, those are some situations that happen all the time. Oh, hey, I really like your outfit today. Or, you know, let's go out for happy hour, discuss this case, or, blah, 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 blah.
Mhm. And so again, contextually, someone may know, like, okay, listen, I'm married, like that's it. Because that could be an early sign and someone could nip it in the bud right there and say, no,
Sure.
no,
Yeah.
that thanks for the compliment.
Thanks,
I
thanks. Yeah,
need that.
yeah. Thanks, but
Right.
no thanks.
But then someone, like you said, they could use that as a justification, like she sees me or she believes in me or she understands me, she likes me, and
Yeah.
there you go. And now that's the justification for it right there.
Yeah. Yes.
Because it
Absolutely.
feels good, like, it feel I'm gonna see this person every day, and I know how they compliment me and all those things.
Yeah. Absolutely. And relationships are hard. They're not what they were at the beginning, right? That stuff goes away, and you pick a partner that you can grow with, and that you're gonna be able to ebb and flow with, and wake up with pink eye and your hair all messy, and they still love you. Um,
Right.
but it's not always the case. So when you get in that down spot of, in a relationship that you're not communicating very well, or something's happening at home, that doesn't mean that, it means you need to stay and hunker down and do the work, not go out and find the invitation of, some sort of spark. But it feels so good. Like, it's addicting. And I've heard it say that it is more addicting than a one hit of crack or cocaine, that dopamine hit.
Wha and so in that scenario, it's not even that the leader is exuding its power, he's just being receptive to
Correct.
the advance or perceived advance.
Right. And I think that that's always what goes wrong. So I mean, we're human. We can compliment each other. Kevin, you look great today. Like, without thinking, oh yeah, let's get in the sack, right? Like, let's put on the lens of where that's coming from, and be clear on where that could lead. And I just think that that's just, when you're in that space in time and you're not feeling so hot about yourself or whatever is happening, you really could go down that bad road.
You mentioned this earlier about the, women in leadership and in power, and so I would assume that the stereotype is that this typically happens more with the men, or the men, cross the lines or blur the lines more than women. Again, that's a stereotype. But I want to know, is that just a stereotype, and what does it look like from on the female side when they are in the positions of power and the dynamics are different?
Um, Interestingly enough, I mean, I don't have the stats on that, but I think that it is definitely the stereotype that the man is kind of that one that is pressing that line. Um, there was a movie with Nicole Kidman, and she was the woman in power. What was that movie? I can't remember what the name is, but She she there was a young intern that came to her, really good-looking intern, of course, it's the movies, but, he said something like, "Heel" to a dog, and the dog just listened, and she stopped dead in her tracks because it's like he got the attention and listened. And I I think that what happens with women in leadership and men in leadership, like, I think they're completely different. I think that men don't look for someone that's going to be telling them what to do and where to go and how to do it and all the things. But women do look for that in men. Like they're like, yeah, you should do that. Like I I recommend this. Like women look for men to lead. And if you are a woman in power, there's not a lot up there that are leading you because you're the leader, right? So they're looking for that. So, that is the sexy part for women. And the men is different. It's the feeling part. So it's just it goes back to basics. It's men want to be respected and women want to be loved. And so when a woman is respecting and hearing him like, "Ooh, he's talking and it's sexy," right? Like you are gonna get smiley like this. And if a man's like, "Hey, I'll take care of you. I'll take care of you," she's gonna be like, "Hell yeah, that's what I want." Right? So those blurred lines can happen all the time, but those are the subtle nuances between men and women.
So who would be more likely to call this out? Like would if it's a woman in power, like would someone be willing to call it out more so than if a man was in power? Like, hey, this looks a little
Mhm.
blurry-ish, or would people just turn a blind eye to it depending on the gender?
I think, in my opinion, a woman would be way more um, the first to call out that situation.
Mhm.
They would say, mm, not so fast. No, we're gonna we're not gonna do this." Whereas a man probably would be more willing to kinda go down that road a little bit, explore that a little bit.
So this kind of goes back to like the gender expectations. Like, would someone expect like they would expect this of a man versus expecting this of a woman? Like, is that
I mean, I don't know if it's the expecting part, it's just I feel like that's just gender roles and the masculine and the feminine and the energy that, is very, very prevalent in, eh, you know both genders, right? Like women want that masculine energy to show up. And when it shows up, we recognize. And then when it's vice versa, there's a man is going to recognize this feminine beauty when she walks in because she's just subtle and she just feeds the energy, right? So I think that it's hard right now because women are so much more accomplished. Back, I'm saying 20, 30, 40 years ago, like women are in power. We are, at the doors gate of, the first women president, right? Like that's different than it
Mhm.
was before. So we are in power and we can do all the things, right? We can pay the bills, we can buy a house, we can buy our car, we can take ourselves on vacations. Like we don't need a man to do it. However, it's my position as a matchmaker that we still really do need that. Like, there is traditional gender roles that are not going to go away. A strong female is going to be wanting a really strong male to take care of her. But it's a problem because those 2 powers show up and the masculine and one has to give. And so it's if it's the woman that's not gonna give, the man, it kinda goes back to his beta a little bit and relaxes and lets her lead a little bit, and that's not necessarily what she wants. She wants him to lead. And so that's what I'm talking about in places in the office place or in places in power, like that dynamic, that feeling of not only power, but leadership and security and someone that's going to be taken care of and listened to and all the things that they're not getting.
Mm.
Heck, that's a recipe. Definitely a recipe.
So, and again, this is regard. It could be in a heterosexual space or non-heterosexual space. Like these behavior, these are just human
Yep.
psychology, human behavior, regardless of
Yep.
orientation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, so I want to transition to what would make someone comply in this space. So, according to research, we understand emotional vulnerability, fear, ambition, or validation seeking can make people more susceptible or compliant, in which we talked about earlier, which has consequences which oftentimes get overlooked. So, how does validation, fear, ambition, emotional vulnerability play into compliance? So, someone who's willing to reciprocate.
Well, of course, it's going to be if someone is your boss or someone that's higher than you in a level in your career, and they're coming to you, and you feel like, huh, like they might like me, or this he might have hit on me right now. Like, what do I do with this? Um, I it's it goes back to a maybe what they're not getting. And so they feel like, "Oh, hey, like, I want this. I want this person in power to take care of me or see me or whatever." And so they actually will just comply naturally because that's what they feel and that's what they want at the time. They're not thinking about, "Hey, next week when HR is gonna talk to you because someone's reporting it," right? I don't think that that's happening.
Right. Right. For sure.
Right? I
Yeah.
mean, and interestingly enough, actually, I had a fella that I was talking to. He worked in a hospital setting. He complimented just benignly, like the older lady than him. Hey, your hair looks great. You just got a haircut, right? And another woman, a third party, didn't like that and reported him.
Mm.
So you have
And
to be very careful, obviously. I mean, there's different dynamics, but there's all sorts of things that can happen, but just
And you mentioned earlier too, even, something as subtle as like, hey, let's go out for drinks, or the department is having a happy hour,
yeah,
or you're at a conference and you've been in meetings and, workstations all day and let's go out for dinner. And then just the ambiance, the setting, everything shifts
yeah,
from professional. It doesn't have to, but oftentimes it can shift, and that becomes the backdrop for it
yeah,
beginning.
yeah, yeah. Eye contact and smiles really, really are powerful.
So we know that this can impact like team chemistry, right? Because like if people see this, and then maybe some people are afraid to say something because they don't want to be a whistleblower, or they might feel like there might be retaliation against me. The person who is involved in it, like you said, they may have this false sense of security that they'll be taken care of regardless of what happens. And so they're not going to, it's benefiting them to a certain degree. And then now you have this a culture where it's just messy,
Mhm.
right? No
Yeah,
one now the person who is the peer, now that person may feel like that person has power over them because they're secretly involved in with the leader.
they know some stuff. They know some stuff. And so, I mean, it's just like it's a trickle effect, right? I won't say anything, but, can you give me that call, with that person, that we talked about, or, whatever example it is, but it is obviously always going to get out. Someone is going to know. And so that leads to this toxic environment. In fact, that in that video, the coworker was cracking up because she knew the whole time, that flirting was going on in that video on the Coldplay example. The whole team knew, and I think that I mean, it's always gonna get exposed, but again, right when you're, maybe winking at the girl or smiling at the girl or leaning back, you're not thinking about what's gonna happen next week. You're thinking about right now. And I think that goes back to what you need and what you're feeling and what you're missing. And if you're not missing anything, you're not gonna feel that so greatly, and I
Mhm.
think that's the biggest thing that I need to I mean, and obviously longing, if people are single, they long for a relationship. They long for that person, that their person. But if you are steadfast on what you want and your clarity and you know that she's out there, but she's really not your boss. Like, it's not gonna be a person that could complicate things. Like, you have to have that clarity around that. Um, I think that's very important. It's very important. How often is it successful that there's a relationship that the boss or the lady, the secretary gets together and it's super successful?
Right.
Really, really never,
Mhm.
never.
Right, and again, it's that intoxication of the moment that
Mhm.
gives the false reality that
Yeah,
it's real, or
yeah,
that it's the foundation to becoming something that's
yeah.
real.
Yeah. And also, conversely, like, if maybe, you know, your boss is hitting on you or something, or makes a little comment, and you get fearful because, okay, I know this is wrong. I don't want to engage, but I don't want to get fired either. And you kind of go along with it. That's so, really being strong and, like, what are the tips that you can do that aren't you're not going to be a whole bee, and if you get hit on and you make him embarrassed, and maybe he's just being nice that day, I don't know, whatever, but saying, oh yeah, we shouldn't probably go there, like, just things like that you can make comments about, that they know that you have a boundary, but you don't have to be a whole crazy person, in
Right,
that delivery.
right.
So, there's that too.
'Cause I think about, when like, we were talking about, like, when people see it, like, they don't wanna be the one to say anything about it because, because in their minds, they might feel like, "Well, it's none of my business," or, "I'm not gonna get involved in that," or, "If I say something, then it's not true, and then I'm gonna look," you know what I mean? Like, all these things are going through,
Yeah.
someone's mind, and then it's water cooler talk, and then it's
Mhm.
lunch talk, and you know what I mean? Like, and it's just this
Yeah.
undertone of, like, conversation that's happening, you
Yeah.
know, at that level.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that's part of, an office environment and gossip and things like that people thrive on. That's that's a fun thing, it's a fun topic. Oh, did you see so and so today and so today? Like, that's maybe that's their entertainment. But you're right. Most people don't wanna get involved. They wanna, wash their hands of it and not be, "Oh, I'm not gonna say anything. It's not none of my business." Or if you do say something, you risk the retaliation of X, Y, and Z, who knows?
Mhm.
So, I think most people just kinda tend to keep their mouth shut and talk about it at the water cooler.
Why do you think this topic is taboo to people? Why do you think it gets talked about enough?
Well, I mean, because people in power, right? You don't really. think about Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, right? You go back to that, like it's taboo. Like you shouldn't do that. Someone that is in power shouldn't take advantage of a situation, right? That's taking advantage of someone in a lesser power. So, you don't want to talk about it. You don't want to think that even happens because we want that world to be good and steady and pure. And but it's not, and we should talk about it more because I think that if people feel more comfortable in saying, hey gosh, thanks for the compliment, but we're not gonna go down that route, or you know take a look at yourself and really what you want. Like if you had a fight with your husband that night, and you take a look at your relationship, not something that's outside of that, right? Like take a look at yourself first. And I just think that, if we can talk about it more, I think that it would happen less and more relationships would be successful. 56% divorce rate, right? It's
which is,
crazy.
yeah, yeah, and it's probably gonna get higher as we.
Oh, I mean, and interestingly enough, these young people aren't getting married as quickly, and as they're waiting for a long time. They're not having kids as much. They're experiencing their lives differently than we did when we were younger. So um, I would hope that it wouldn't get any higher, but I think that the marriage rate is dropping for sure, which is not ideal either.
So you were saying that over 50% divorce rate
Mhm,
now with couple and people, particularly with younger people, where they're not maybe entering into relationships is.
mhm. Yeah, they're just not I mean, they're experiencing life, they're making money, interestingly enough, there's so many different ways to make money and do things online and become an entrepreneur, that, you know, we don't really have a ton of office stuff happening anymore
Mhm,
either.
mhm.
I think that that's another thing.
So as we wrap up here, what are like, one or two or three things that you want our listeners to take away, or viewers to take away from our conversation today?
Yeah. Um, I think that the first thing that I want your viewers to take away with is really getting in touch with what you want in your life, right? Beginning of 2026, this is a great time to examine that, and what really is important to you. What do you want? What if you don't have a partner? What does he or she look like, and how he's showing up with your life, and how are you showing up in their life? Um, what can you provide? What do you want to be provided with? What are your values? What what is it that you want out of your life right now? And really clarify that. And I don't want you to just say, I want, tall, dark, and handsome with a, $1 million in his bank account or whatever. Or she's got double D's and,
Mhm,
whatever,
uh-huh.
whatever have you. I want you to really examine the feeling of what you want. What does that, if you want someone that has money in his bank account, why? What does that mean for you? Do you want security, and what does that feel like to you? Really being in touch with those feelings are that's the most important part of clarifying. Because if you don't feel it, you're not going to know when it hits you. So really being clear on what you want in your own life and what you want for that person to bring in. Um, mm, Being able to use your words, and you don't have to feel ashamed about it or feel bad about it or feel like you're being a whole bitch about it. Like you can use your words very nicely. And if something doesn't feel right to you or if it doesn't look right to you, just say, "Hey, I'm not on board with this, but, I'll go over here and I'm gonna do my own thing," right? Like, it's that I want you to be empowered. And thirdly, know that just the world is good. It is good. While we don't think it looks good at this point, like, we need some positive, good energy out there flowing. And I think that if we are focusing on positive aspects of life, more is going to come from that. And so I think that, just really there's good people in the world. There's good people that I connect every single day. And people in matchmaking in my world, like it's a byproduct of what I do. Like I meet people, amazing people every day, which I'm so grateful for. But everyone is in their life. They're working, they're going to the gym, they're seeing their friends, they're traveling. I'm trying to connect them. I'm intersecting them. That's my job. So, yeah, would love if you're single, if you have any need any advice, I'm always a resource because dating in the wild is rough. But if you ever get into this sort of situation of someone that is coming on to you and you feel good about it, okay, talk to a friend. Maybe, you can talk about it and see if you can kind of work out where those feelings are coming from.
Well, I really appreciate the conversation and the knowledge, and I know this is gonna hit with a lot of people. I mean, we've all have our own careers and experiences and things that we've seen or been a part of, and so I just think this is gonna resonate really well with people. This segment is sponsored by Kowalski's Markets, where it's all about the joy of good food. I want to ask you, as I ask all my guests, what is your Twin Cities hidden gem? It can be a place, event, or an experience that you think more people should know about.
Oh, okay. Well, I am going to choose, while I haven't been there myself, I know firsthand knowledge because my daughter is working at the Lymph Lounge in Edina. And this place is getting so much traction because of the results that people are getting. Lymphatic drainage. These gals are from Brazil and they've had this, method that, comes from Beverly Hills and yada, 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 right here in Edina. But it's really, really getting good results. So I think you should try that.
Okay, so it's like LYMPH,
LIPH.
Limp
Lounge.
Lounge.
Yep. Yep. In
Okay.
Edina.
Is it like a restaurant or is it is like
It's a massage place. It's
oh,
it's it's lymphatic drainage and massage.
got it. Okay.
So if you are getting ready for a special event, you should go there and you're gonna look 10 times better when you walk in.
Awesome. All
So
right.
who
We
doesn't like
got
that?
exactly. Well, Erica, I really appreciate your time and your knowledge and expertise. So, thank you again, and thank you all for listening to this episode of Twin Cities Leaders. I will see you next week. Bye now.